Alright, so in this video, I'm just going to talk about some things I've been thinking about, uh, mainly pertaining to my life. I know there's a lot of stuff I could talk about in terms of like global events, uh, current events, all that kind of stuff, but other people have got me covered on that. I'm sure you've heard plenty of things from other people who talk about that kind of stuff all the time. I would like to try and at least, if I were to talk about that kind of stuff, offer something unique, um, some sort of unique insight into it that other people can't offer. But I'm not going to really do that right now. I don't think. Um, I don't think I have anything for that right now. But let's start with my life real quick. I guess just sort of as an update for people who have been following for a long time, or maybe people who are just getting into this channel. Um, so I don't really post much on YouTube at all, and that's going to change. I know I said that 2 years ago. Um, I started by uploading clips of my games, and that wasn't a bad idea. Um, I think I definitely should keep doing that and actually do it in a better way. I think maybe it's better to just like upload the whole game kind of in a video instead of like splitting it into parts. I don't know. But I've definitely thought about that, especially for the visual novel kind of games. People can just enjoy reading them on YouTube or something. Um, but anyway, I did that for a little bit, and then I started streaming on Twitch, and I uploaded some of the videos to YouTube, and I stopped for a while because it was not really doing much. Because I realized that people don't want to watch 2 hour videos where like the content is not really hyper focused. People would rather watch a 10-minute video where the content is really you know narrowed down to a specific thing where they're going to be interested in that kind of thing, and it makes sense. It makes sense why. So I continued with doing Twitch. At the same time, I had to get a full-time job because um, of basically certain financial situations. So the good news is that those are kind of over, and I'm kind of in a really good spot right now, actually, in terms of finances. So that's kind of nice. For the first time in a long time, I don't really need to worry about that. Um, so that was always like a cloud hanging over my head. Was that, uh, what am I gonna do if I can't pay the bills with my games or something? Now I'm still thinking about that, and I'm still thinking about how to pay the bills with my games. Um, but I don't know. I don't really have a plan for the foreseeable future uh, of how that's going to work, because you can't really. One thing I've learned is you can't really force that thing to happen. You can't really force it. And the thing that I want to do first off is establish kind of a connection with people out there, because I used to have one. And basically, between 2016 and 2017, I kind of severed a lot of my social media. I just went off the grid. And uh, actually, well, I guess that's kind of what I talked about in the other video I posted on this channel a while back. But I did that because, like, I just couldn't take what was happening. I couldn't stand all the stuff that was going on, and I just had to, like, do, like, a detox to get away from it all. And it did help. It did help me sort of uh, realign my frame of mind to focus on things that are important. Now, I think a lot of stuff that went on in my personal life between 2014 to 2017 uh, really slowed my momentum down. Because in the beginning, when I started this kind of stuff, um, I really got started in 2010. And then 2011, we did really good, and 2012 was still pretty good. We put out a game in 2013, and that turned out to be really well received, and people liked it, except for a few people, and that's always sort of bothered me why they didn't like it. Um, there were some strange reviews, strange negative reviews out there. All of them, well, all of the reviews that matter were positive, basically. Um, and it's not that I can't take negative feedback, but it's just that the reasons I could do the whole video on this. There were just some really bad negative reviews that were not constructive and really actually sort of tie into my what happened, like, to my self-confidence, because people who make games put a lot of time and effort into them, and when you're just starting out, a negative review can have a really bad impact, um, especially if you are sort of mocked and made fun of for it. um, I don't really want to go into all those details, but the bottom line is that that was the first blow to my confidence a little bit, was when um, I don't know if it was a blow, but it was like it got me thinking in the wrong mindset, which was caring about what other people thought. Um, I started paying attention to reviews, which I should not have done. I should have just continued to make what I wanted to make. Instead, I sort of set out to appease them. And so when I talk about negative reviews, let me just say it straight out that uh, they complained. Okay, so we're talking about Detective Butler. Okay, the game. They were complaining that there were some sort of like the female characters. This is the criticism I remember. The female characters in that game, which apparently everybody likes. If you go on Steam, you can see people like the female characters in that game. But this reviewer had a chip on his shoulder. He had to say that the female characters were like written in a sexist way or something. And it was so stupid because if he actually paid attention to the game, he would realize that all of the characters were bad people. His criticism was that the female characters had no redeeming qualities, but that's true for all the characters. Everybody had flaws in that game. That was the whole point. Um, when you're reading a detective story, of course the characters are going to have flaws. Of course everyone's going to have secrets that are like, uncovered, and it's like, oh, the person you thought was a good person really wasn't after all, or something like that. And it's like, they've done some evil things or something like that. And it's like, he just doesn't know, he just didn't know the genre he was reading or something. And I always thought that was a really bad review, a really stupid review. And it didn't help that there was a stream that he did where he had a whole, like, it was basically making fun of it. And then there was another YouTube series where someone actually let's played it. And this is a really weird incident, but uh, because I actually thanked them for playing it. I said, "Hey, I'm the creator of the game. Thank you for playing it." And my comment was removed. And it's like, why was that? Why did my comment get removed when I thanked him for that? And it turned out that he actually didn't like the game, it seemed, and he was making fun of it in the Let's Play. And it's like, well, so those are two big strikes, and two people in this community, they say. Uh, so 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 what I'm trying to get at is that my introduction to the English visual novel community was very bad. Like, in the first place, I was not using the engine that they all use. In the second place, these reviewers were trashing my game. And despite all of the positive reviews that everybody continually gives it, even today, uh, you would think, what is wrong with these people? If you're a fan of my game, you'd think, why would they do that? Um, and I've just had it in my head all these years that I've never been able to say it to anybody. And it's like, yeah, that hurt a lot. It hurt, and I wanted to try and make something that would appease the community and make them, you know, sort of make myself feel like I was part of it. And so in 2014, 2015, I tried to do that and integrate myself into the community a little bit. And I kind of had a presence here and there. But the more I tried to get my presence involved, uh, I don't know, there were some negative parts to that too, because I realized that these people weren't necessarily my friends, and just trying to find random internet people. I don't know, like, just because you're a game developer doesn't necessarily mean that you would be a good friend, you know? Um, like, friendship, I guess, has more to do with your personal values and beliefs than a whole lot of other stuff, or like um, arbitrary qualities. So anyway, at that point, um, I found out basically that a lot of game developers, especially in that area, are very heavily involved in politics. And the first thing that like my number one rule for me was that games should not mix with politics. Like, games are for fun. They're supposed to be something you play for fun. And to push a political message through the game is disingenuous and treats your customer base like they're not intelligent, basically. It's disrespectful because you're trying to, you're trying to pull a fast one on them by instead of trying to teach them something important or like, teach them a skill, you're trying to tell them how they should live their life, and I don't like that. And so obviously when certain things happened, I'm not the first person to say that there's that kind of bias in game development or games journalism. I'm not the first person to say that, and I wouldn't be the only person. I won't be the last either. I realized, like, okay, I got this feeling again where I was like the fish out of water, because I've had similar incidents before where, like, digging into my personal backstory a little bit, I used to be, I was raised in a religious household, and throughout all my life, I was religious and believed in Christianity, and then up to a certain point, I began to question it, and suddenly I was not part of that group either. I mean, I decided to voluntarily say that because I said, well, I thought to myself, well, if I don't really believe this anymore, then I guess I'm not that. So then that's when I said, to my family, hey, I don't really believe that anymore. And that was in my teen years before I got involved with this stuff. So I kind of already had that mindset of like, well, okay, I'm the only person in the room who thinks differently here. And I know what that feeling is like. And so I've always had a lot of sympathy for people and empathy for people who are like the lone wolf against everyone else. Like, you're the only person who believes this thing. And my tendency typically has been to believe, or at least give a little bit of wiggle room to the person who believes this thing. Like, okay, why? I want to get to know, why do you believe this thing? And not just shrug off the person. Like, this comes up a lot in stuff like people who are like wrongly accused of a crime, where it seems like the person is guilty, and you've probably seen this on like TV shows or real crime TV or whatever, where person is like sentenced to jail or prison for a crime that they never committed, and then like 20 years later they get let out. I've always had a lot of like a lot of sympathy and empathy for those people too, because it's the same idea. It's like you're this one person, and the whole world doesn't really, it's not on the same page as you. You're thinking, I mean, you're just alone is how it feels. Because you think, man, if everybody else really is this way, then I'm just such a loner. And I felt that way about other parts of my life, like wanting to start my own business. A lot of other people around me just want to get a comfy 9-to-5 job and work that for the rest of their life. And it's like, I've always been the kind of person to sort of question what I'm doing, and maybe too much. So, kind of a big digression there, but my point is that I'm not really a stranger to being the odd one out, and I felt that way in terms of game development. And in 2016, 2017, stuff happened where things began to get so political that I just didn't want to get involved in it anymore. I didn't want to have that. I didn't want to be involved in such a way like that. And really, some of the best, or some of the game developers that I admire most, don't get involved in that kind of stuff. When you just boil it down to that. So I tend to follow the people who sort of blaze their own trail, like, I don't like to follow the followers. I like to follow the people leading the trail, and really I like to be a leader in general and lead my own path, and that's kind of what I want to do. And in order to lead and to carve your own path out, You have to not be afraid of failure and not be afraid of taking a risk. And you know, there's a lot to be afraid of for me. I guess when all that happened, I lost majority of my friends anyway. So, and what remained were, I guess, the people closest, the closest friends to me. They stuck by. So, and that's just part of the story. But so I've gone through a lot, and that hurt my self confidence as well. Because how are you going to get people to care about your game if you're not part of that community? But what if you don't want to take part in like certain political things, or ideological things? It's like, well, I don't want to confess to something I don't believe. Like same idea as the false arrest. Like if people get, you don't want to confess to a crime you never committed. So, I would never want to do that, and so people can't make me do that, and I won't. So, I just have to do it my own way and make games my own way, and I've stayed quiet about it. And one of my ways of getting around that has been to develop games on Twitch and stream and just show people that I am hard at work. I'm not sitting around doing nothing, and that I am a decent person, at least a little bit. I mean, decent in terms of not just like programming skill or whatever, but, we're in game development, but even just personality, and that I'm a nice person. I like to think I am, but, I don't want to like talk too much about, bragging, but because I really do try to remain humble. I think that's a really key component that a lot of people don't have these days, is being humble, especially in the age of like attention. Everybody wants attention, and people will go on social media and do really stupid things and say really stupid things just for attention. And I think that's leading to the fall of society in general, and I'm sad to see that, because now people can't really have civil conversations anymore. And I thought it was bad 4 years ago, and it's even worse now, and it's probably going to get worse 4 years from now. So I don't know what I can do about that. Probably not a whole lot, right now at least. But if people aren't willing to like speak up, then there definitely won't be like any sort of civil conversation. Like the first thing to be able to do is to acknowledge that people have different viewpoints, and that we can get along despite those different viewpoints. So things have just gotten so crazy, and I've wanted to start up my YouTube channel for, like I said, at least 2 years, if not longer, and I just never really found a good time for it because there's just so much going on, and I'm tired of it now. I'm just tired of not doing it, and it's like, if I'm really going to take myself seriously, then I have to do this. If I want other people to take me seriously, then I have to start saying something. I mean, I don't have to say anything big or grand or, one way or the other. I just have to start talking and, let people know what I'm all about, and get people to care. Because like I said, I don't like the disingenuous approach of trying to like get involved in like a game development community or something like that. It's just like, I don't know. I don't like the whole idea of selling my soul for that kind of thing. I'd rather keep my soul and not make as much profit, rather than, selling my soul and for like $1 million or something, or like 10 billion dollars or whatever. I'd like to think that I could keep who I am, not have to confess to a crime that I didn't commit, that kind of thing. Not be forced to worship an ideology that I don't believe in, that kind of thing. So whether it's a religious or political one, and that really should have nothing to do with game development, but because of certain people, it got involved. So it's like, games are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be, and I started making them because this circles back to my whole point of why I started talking about this. Games are supposed to be fun, and it was supposed to be fun to make them. But for the past 5 or 6 years, it really hasn't been that much fun. It's been very stressful, and so that sort of hurt me a little bit. It's kind of why things have taken such a long time to get anywhere, is because I'm in such a negative mental mood, uh, very stressed out, depressed and anxious, and busy. Like, I have to do things other than that. It's like at a certain point, especially this year, like this year, I started to wonder, what is my life like at this point? Would I be happy with my life if I, traveled back 5 years ago and said, here's what you're doing in 5 years? And the answer is no. I would think, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing, man? That's what I would ask myself. What are you doing? And you need to get more games out. You need to work on more games, or at least do something more productive than what you're currently doing. Um, and honestly, like I could do things other than games too. Like, games have always been the thing I'm interested in, but there's other stuff I could do. Um, that's a discussion topic for another day, probably. But um, I have lots of ideas for things, programming things, or just business ideas I could do. But there's a part of me that actually wants to go outside and enjoy nature for a while too. Like, sitting in my house coding all day sort of gets to me. So I kind of want to be able to have enough, not just to survive on, but also to be able to go outside every once in a while. Um, and I've kind of thought, well, sometimes I wonder if it's even for me, if I should really even be programming, if, learning all these different things. But I do want to learn. I'm always interested in learning, but I just wonder if, like, I don't know. I think I'm interested in learning how, like, things work at a fundamental level and building stuff. I like the idea of um, do-it-yourself type of stuff, building your own software and electronics and all that. I like that kind of thing, but I also like to do other stuff, and I just need to be able to have time for other stuff too. And there's so much I haven't done that needs to be done. And so anyway, just to get back to the main point, um, things have been kind of slow because, like I said, I've had to deal with financial issues, but those are kind of resolving themselves right now. Um, Other than that, mainly the thing is at this point working on my current games. So all of this I've been talking about has been leading up to this point, which is that I've been very afraid to actually put my actual thoughts into a game, my actual thoughts and emotions and feelings, because what if they are judged harshly? Um, Now, the thing is, if you look at Detective Butler, which I released in 2013, I did all that without caring. And so that goes back to what I said, where I started caring about what other people thought. When I made that game, I didn't care what other people thought. I just did what was fun. I didn't care. Um, but now we've entered a culture, and we've been in one for a while, where people are forcing you to think about what other people think. Um, you know, is it's like I can bring up the potential issues. So, you know, are the characters in your story sexist or racist or any number of things that could be offensive? Is your game inherently offensive to someone? There was a parody game that was a while ago that was like, I forgot what it was, but basically the point of the parody game was that as it tried to be more accommodating, it turned out that no game would even exist at all if you tried to accommodate everybody. And so, because anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but the point is, people who complain, I shouldn't even be thinking about. I shouldn't concern myself with those people. But we have certain issues where, like, okay, let's say that in this next game, I want to have the police in the game, right? Because it's a detective story, so there's going to be police involved. Well, police is a hot topic issue right now. So, and it was 4 years ago too. So, are like, what am I saying if I put police in the game and it goes one way or another? Like, is that going to be an inherently political message? I don't know. are people going to say it should be one way or another? I don't know. Um, I mean, it's you can't predict what people are going to get offended at, but there's that idea. There's the idea that maybe, it's a mystery story. There's going to be a criminal or a culprit, and like, is it offensive to have a culprit that is, insert something here? Is it offensive to have a culprit like that because you're saying that all people are like that? It's like, no, not really. I don't think that just like one character being bad or evil or having evil motivations doesn't mean that all people who are just happen to have the same characteristics are evil. That's completely stupid. And somewhere along the way, people lost their ability to actually reason and think logically. And so I don't want to make the game political by nature. Like, I want it to be a fun game. I want it to be meaningful, though. And the question I'm wondering is, how do you have a meaningful story that sort of avoids offending anyone? And I don't think you can. Um, a meaningful story has to be something that is meaningful to you, at least. And there has to be a point or a message. There has to be the there has to be like a description of a hero character, and he's the role model, or she is the role model that the person takes after and says, okay, this is a story about a character facing a problem and overcoming it. And that's sort of the meaningful thing about stories and games. And there has to be conflict. That's just the nature of the story, and it has to be overcome. So you can't really get away with that without having some sort of message opinions that people might differ about. And so, even though I'm not trying to do anything that is like controversial, but I've always been afraid that it would be interpreted that way. Um, if so I mean, I could think about it for hours and talk about it for hours, but I've been so afraid to do that. I've been so afraid to actually put my thoughts and emotions into an actual game where I actually have like a message in my head that I'm trying to get out. And that's what I did in the first game. Like I said, I had a message, which was sort of based off of my family situation at the time. Actually, a lot of those thoughts and feelings were expressed through the main character. And if I were to do that again, where I express my thoughts and feelings through the main character, I was always afraid, would the people who liked the first game not like the second one because I said the wrong thing or I made them upset, And it's like, at this point, I would just be happy to finish the game. I would just be happy to finish the story. And, I think it's important to find my audience who likes not just the stories, but like I don't know. And you don't even have to agree with any sort of message or opinion that I have. You know, I could say that my favorite type of pizza is a cheese pizza, or my favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla ice cream, which are both true things. And we could disagree on that. But, the best flavor of ice cream is vanilla ice cream, I guess. I don't really like the other flavors that much. And someone could take offense to that. Someone could say that they don't like me because of that, and that they're going to quit playing all my games because I only eat vanilla ice cream and cheese pizza. And it's like, look, I can't do anything about that. So I'm not going to worry about it. Now, there's obviously like the wider issue of the other stuff I've talked about, the whole issue of politics in games. I don't really have a way to solve that issue. All I can really do is just continue doing my own stuff. And if I'm going to do anything creative, then the thing that matters is what my thoughts are and what emotions I put into it. It's not going to be finding some sort of objective. I mean, I try to strive for the objective truth, but when you're doing anything creative, that's not going to happen, because what matters is your personal story and opinions behind it. People care about those kinds of things. They care about when you get involved in some sort of creative work like that. the question is, okay, why did the author choose to do this? You might see a painting and wonder why the author chose to draw the painting that way, or why did you include this thing in the story? That's because people search for meaning in things, and they search for that meaning because they think that the author has a maybe an interesting thought in their head, or maybe they've discovered something that you haven't thought of, and you want to know what they've thought about. You want to know what that person is thinking, and to hide that from people would not be right. To just try and water down my ideas so that they're palatable to a general audience would not be right. It wouldn't give the people who are actually interested in finding out what I'm thinking what they want. So what people want are the ideas that are in my head. They want the ideas in my head, and they want it on, well, I would say pen and paper, but they really want it in like the form of a video game. And to have external forces try and say that I shouldn't do any of that because other people might not like it is to just take away things that the people want from me. Like the people who are actually going to play my games want something, and I should not listen to the people who want to take that away. So, I'm not gonna. The other thing I want to reiterate is that I still don't like propaganda in games. I don't like it one way or the other. I don't think it's really beneficial. It's very tempting to just, when people get upset about something, it's very tempting to just like do the exact opposite. When they try and say like, don't do this, it's very tempting to just do the thing that they don't want you to do, but just to piss them off. But the thing that I would like is to just be able to express my thoughts, and maybe not even my thoughts, but just if we're talking about like a scientific experiment, whatever the objective truth is, I don't have control over that. I can only perform experiments to see what that is. So a lot of games are kind of like that, where you have control over certain parameters, and you just find out what the truth is by experimenting with things. And I'm not going to censor whatever that truth is. I think people should figure that out on their own. I like those kind of games the most because there's no interference. And a lot of the games, unfortunately, that I've, in the communities I've tried to be part with, tried to be too much like propaganda and tried to insert their own, not even their own opinions, but an agenda. Like, they don't base their game in truth. They base their game in fiction or something that they wish was true. And so the pursuit of truth is really important to me, which is why I even write detective stories in the first place. And you'd think it'd be kind of obvious as well. But the pursuit of truth is important. And so honesty is also important. I've always put honesty first in a lot of situations. I know some people might say, well, honesty is not always the best policy, but when you make lies, it's easy to get tangled up in a web of lies, and that's how people get undone. So it leads to their fall. So you have nothing to be afraid of if you're on the side of truth. Some people might want to make truth on their side, but you just have to be on the side of truth, whatever that is, and go with what the truth actually is. The problem that we're encountering today is that it's hard to tell what's truth and what's fiction. It's very hard to see what, things that actually happened and things that are just being made up. So people thought the internet would lead to information and knowledge being spread, but it's only mainly led to misinformation. Well, not only, but the problem we're dealing with is the massive spread of misinformation. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to the world in the next few years, but it's a little. I always try to be optimistic, but it is a little nerve-wracking. I don't know, to think about what might happen. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on everywhere. So, but I think it's important to try and stay calm and as infuriating as it might be, I think it's important to stay calm and just survive the storm. And, uh, you know, don't give up on your dreams and hopes. Don't give up on your hopes and dreams, because if you do that, then, if you get distracted, that's exactly what will happen. Over the past few years, I got distracted, and I feel like I've wasted a lot of time, even though maybe some people think I haven't, but I could have done I could have done a lot more, and um, I think I could have got a lot more games out, and they would have been a lot better if I just was more confident in not just my. It's not really my skills I lack confidence in. It's just my ideas, and that leads to me getting analysis paralysis, and instead of going with one idea, I go with a different idea. So um, I don't think anyone else should be held to that same issue. I think my advice is to don't think about that too much and just do things, especially um, when it's a creative pursuit. The whole point is to enjoy yourself and have fun, and not let people get in the way of that. You know, as long as you're nice and respectful as well, but people take advantage of that all the time. They'll try and say, "Oh, you weren't," you know, that just goes back to the point. People try and take advantage of that, and that's been something I've had to deal with this whole time. So, anyway, I guess that's all I wanted to say, was that I've had a lot on my mind over the past few years. This really is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's just surface level talk about it, but um, I can't afford to be afraid of what other people think anymore. That's just the bottom line. That's all. That's the point I'm trying to get across. And if you're thinking about making a creative pursuit and you're afraid that people might look at it a certain way or think about it a certain way and not like it, I think the best thing to do is just make it anyway, because um, you got nothing to lose basically. um, you're only delaying the inevitable, which is that you're gonna go make it anyway, probably, if you're gonna make it at all. So um, anyway, this video got kind of long. I thought it'd only be like 10 minutes, but um, went a little bit longer than I thought. But if you stuck around to the end, I appreciate it. Um, if not, then oh well. Can't force anybody to do anything. But um, I would like to get in the habit of doing YouTube videos on a regular basis, where I'm not afraid to post what I think. Um, and they don't even have to be about hot button issues. Like I said, could be about what food I enjoy eating. I don't know. People will get upset if I say what video game console I prefer. Is it Nintendo, Xbox, or PlayStation? Well, take a guess. But it's like I could make videos on so many different things, and the thing holding me back has been that fear of, not just fear of failure or rejection, which I have a lot, because I failed and rejected many times, but people also say that the most successful people have been rejected and they failed many times. Um, so that's not a bad thing. It's not bad, but it does hurt. It hurts a lot, but you just got to keep getting back up, even though it hurts. And the thing to do is to not be afraid of that. So I don't know what I'll talk about. I don't know if I'll talk about. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. I could talk about that, but you hear that everywhere else. So I like to find some sort of unique thing I could talk about. And there's a lot of channels I like to watch that talk about fun things, entertainment, video games, that kind of stuff. There's that aspect of it. Um, Really, I enjoy actually talking with other people and discussing things with them, because uh, I like to get other people's perspectives on things. That's why I feel so bad about not really having a community to talk with, is because I can't get that external feedback, and it just boils up inside. Like, okay, I've got my thoughts and opinions, sure, but I don't really want to lecture people on them. Um, I'd rather listen to what other people have to say and see if we can find a common ground and get something done. I don't want to just sit there and talk to somebody, um, or talk at somebody. That happens a lot too. But anyway, my point being, just to summarize everything, there's a lot that I want to do, and I'm sure there's a lot that you would like to do as well. And the only way to make things happen is to not be afraid and to take the risk. So, um, take a calculated risk. Don't just dive into the shark infested waters, but make sure that you do your diligence and make sure that you're making a good decision. But um, at a certain point, you can't be afraid of what you have to say, because there's a lot of people out there who are talking about things that they're not qualified to talk about, and nobody asked for their opinion, but they're doing it anyway, and they're actually successful. So it makes me think about certain things. It's like, well, if they can do it, maybe I can too. So, all right, this video is too long. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in another one. So.